Good evening, everybody. My name is Bert Dicht. I am the Managing Director of Membership for the National Space Society. And on behalf of my colleague, Larry Ahern, Vice President of Chapters, I'd like to welcome you here to our Space Forum this evening, Cybersecurity in Space, Now and in the Future. I know you're going to find this really interesting. So as always, in terms of our agenda, we go through a little bit of virtual etiquette. We'll have a few NSS announcements. Then I'll talk about what's coming up next. And then we'll get to the program. And I forgot to update the slide. Unfortunately, everybody, we're not going to have a virtual door prize tonight. So sorry about that. That was from our last session and forgot to change that. But we will have a couple in the next couple of space forums coming up. And then we'll get out and we'll close the session for the evening. So again, looking forward to a really great session tonight. In terms of the etiquette, you all know the routine. Feel free to submit a question using our Q&A function. And that is typically, it's easier for us to pick out the questions coming into the Q&A function. But you are certainly welcome to use the chat function. It works well. We only ask that you be respectful of our panelists and the audience. So we'll be checking both of those. There were a number of questions that were submitted, and I did pass those on to our speaker tonight. So he's going to try to address them. But again, feel free to ask questions as we go along, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. This is a little different than in the past. I know I always give a pitch about giving to our cause, but we have a brand new program that we've started. And we'd like to see if you might be interested in supporting this. The NASA Office of Technology Policy and Strategy had issued a space-based solar power report. And NSS felt this report had several deficiencies. And as you might know, space-based solar power is one of our 4 key areas of strategic focus. And it was felt that this report might impact our ability to move forward in this area. So we initiated a project to redo the report. And you all know John Mankins, who is an expert in this area. And he's been on as a Space Forum participant. So he's taken the lead on this. And it's already well underway. And the target is to publish this report in September. To support this, we've set up a Space Solar Power Fund. And we really would appreciate donations. We got a couple of major donors that are funding the majority of it, but the individual contributions will help us. So by donating to the Space Solar Power Fund, you're going to not just support the report, but obviously investing in our future of clean and limitless energy from space. So your contribution is really going to help us. What I'll do is I will put this link into the chat. And feel free. And again, thank you in advance if you're interested in supporting it. And we really do appreciate that and all the support you provide to the National Space Society. I also do want to remind everybody to complete the Space Forum survey. It only takes a couple of minutes. And as I said before, it really helps us in terms of planning. The survey is anonymous, and the link will pop up as soon as the forum is over. Finally, before we get into our program, I do want to remind everybody we're working to conduct this flagship tour of the Kennedy Space Center in September. I will put this link into the chat as well. We are working now on a message to go out to all the members. We're hoping it'll be late next week because we want to start getting this planning well underway. The first tour in January was incredible, so we're looking for another great event. So you'll hear more about that as we go forward with our space forums, and also again look for the messaging in your email. So and we hope to see you here at the Kennedy Space Center in September. What's coming up in terms of our space forums? Well, we actually have a town hall coming up on Saturday morning. This is outside of our normal programming. It's going to be a Spun Debate program debrief. And you might recall we've talked about the Spun Debates. These are incredible learning opportunities for students, both high school and university students, to debate key areas related to space exploration, development, and settlement. And they just had the finals at our ISDC in May. So we've got a lot of the coaches and the mentors and the participants in the finals who will be on the town hall just to have a discussion about what worked, what didn't, and what to look forward to in the future. So you're all welcome to join this. I'll get a message out to everybody tomorrow and look for the email. We're not going to send a mass message out to all the members, but it will be 9 a.m. on Saturday. So hopefully you can join us. A week from tonight, we have the Leadership Town Hall, and we've got our new CEO, Carlton Johnson, who will be present. And Carlton is also the chairman of the Board of Governors. We have our NSS President, Isaac Arthur, and our NSS COO, Dale Scran. So it looks to be a great session. They're gonna be talking a little about what's going on, and then you have the ability to ask your questions about NSS and what we're doing and how we're impacting our efforts to become a spacefaring civilization. On August 15th, we have Jonathan Ward, the author, and Mike Linebeck, a former space shuttle launch director, who'll be talking about their book, Bringing Columbia Home. And we will be doing a virtual door prize for that one as well. And then the following week, still working with Robert Zubrin about his new book, The New World on Mars. So again, we will do a virtual door prize with that. And if anyone who's on from our last session 3 weeks ago, I finally got our books from Loretto Hall. So I'll be getting those out to the people who won the door prizes at our last Space Forum. So a lot coming up, working on a number of different ideas, as I said, for September, October. So just look forward to that. So with that, I want to get into our program for tonight. I know you're anxiously awaiting this. So it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. You probably, if you've been part of our space forums before, you know Bryce very well. He's done a number of sessions for us, including one on space farming. And so we're really looking forward to this session tonight. Bryce has, as a background, a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering, a master's in computer science and software engineering, and a master's in biology. And he is a cybersecurity professional, and also a professor, and also the acting director of cybersecurity at cybersecurity with AI at Franciscan University of Steubenville. And Bryce was just talking a little about that before we got on, about the programming and the students involved in that. So it's really going to be interesting. He is a past NSS board member, and as I mentioned, a space ambassador. So it's my pleasure to turn this over to Bryce. So let me stop sharing right now. And Bryce, it is all yours.
Yep. Let's see, screen share. Yep. Well, I don't know what that internet connection thing is, but you can see my slides, right?
We see it and hear you well, so we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, my internet's been a little flaky. I apologize to everybody. I got Charter coming out, or sorry, Spectrum coming out tomorrow. Man, they changed their name. So yeah, normally you hear me talk about space farms. My day job and my night job both revolve around cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. So my day job is with the aerospace systems, let's say, for a different place than Franciscan, that I do all kinds of cool, aerospace cyber stuff. And my night job is actually teaching cybersecurity and artificial intelligence and doing research on some of our capstone projects there at Franciscan. So I'm going to cover a lot of, since this is a general audience, I'm going to start with a lot of terminology. And then I'm going to say, okay, we're going to talk about satellites that are at risk in current spacecraft. And then I'm going to sort of reach beyond that and say, okay, let's say what happens in the future, right? What happens if we have a future space hotel or a future space settlement? And what kind of cyber risks are at that, right? And then how that might affect some things like the space economy as we go forward. So cybersecurity, and these are all my definitions, right? So if you look them up, they might be wrong. but mine is, I'm talking about all the things that go into protecting data, protecting the ability to do the things I want to do with it, right? Protecting the ability to process it, the ability to operate all my things that have chips in them, right? And all the things that connect all those systems together in an environment where people want to break it, right? So not just my users want to break it, right? But there are people out there with ill intent, maybe adversarial intent, right? And they want to either use what I have or they want to disrupt it and stop it, right? So that's a threat environment, right? A series of people or organizations that compose a threat against what I want to do with my data and computing systems. So I want to keep all my stuff working as I designed it, right? And I want only those who I want to see my data to see it, right? Everybody else gets to stay out, right? So I keep the stuff I want to keep private, right? And the bad guys are always out there, right? And they're always out there, and I put the wrong steal in there, but steal your data. The enemy is a wide variety of enemies, right? And it's many to many for their motivations, right? The motivations are on the right, the types are on the left, right? So some of these, right? They're a bunch of just amateurs and people who have a hobby of just causing trouble, right? You have expert to near expert criminals and organized crime. And if you're wondering, the drug lords do have their own internet network, in case you're curious, right? And then there are corporate cyber squads for different companies that try to grab data from other companies, right? Now you're thinking that's illegal in the US, but not necessarily if I'm crossing international borders, right? And then, of course, nation state actors, the armed forces, and espionage, right? So all those have all their possible motivations for getting into your stuff or other people's stuff and either doing damage, grabbing data, maybe just sneaking in and grabbing a little bit here and there, maybe just using what you got, right? They might just use your assets. They don't have to disrupt them. They can just sneak in there and use them, right? So there's a lot of different enemies out there as far as we're concerned. So an adversary is anyone who wants to get in and do something contrary to what you're trying to do, right? They just might want to use your stuff, take your money, get your data, just plain stop you, right? And they can be both external or, and this is frightening, they could be an insider threat, which means there's somebody inside your organization already, somebody who's just maybe disgruntled, or somebody that was planted there for that purpose, right? And then if you say, well, I've got cyber defenses, right? Well, defenses are anything to stop the adversaries from doing what they want to do, right? If you want to look at it long term, there's these things called advanced persistent threats, or APTs, and these are groups of people that are always causing a chance of compromise. They're just constantly causing trouble as far as we are concerned. And there's a link on there that's in MITRE, which is another group that I don't work for them, but I work in another FFRDC that works with them, right? And so you can look there, or you can look at the Center for Information Security. I think it used to be that. Now it's a Cyber Information something or other, CISA Gov. They have a list of these APTs as well, these advanced persistent threats. While I'm talking about it, let's go ahead and nail the AI question in here, because I'm going to talk a teeny bit about AI and how it figures into this equation. When I say AI, I'm talking about systems that employ algorithms implemented in computer hardware and software that emulate behaviors, right? So it could be a very simple behavior, or it could be very complicated behavior, right? And then when I say machine learning, it's a type of AI, right, that has algorithms that can adapt responses based on conditions. So using data that was trained into it using patterns, right? So machine learning relies on a pattern that's in a series of equations called algorithms, right? And that pattern, once inputted into the data that's in that the algorithms use, can now respond to inputs in a way dictated by that pattern. So whatever pattern's in the data is the pattern that it uses, right? So if you trained it on a bunch of dogs walking through a park, and every picture that you had of dogs walking through the park, there was a bench in it, I guarantee the machine learning algorithm is going to think a bench is a dog, right? Because that's how they work, right? They're just that simple. They see a pattern in the data, whether you like it or not, and use it to spit output. Well, now that I've done my AI speech there, how do they get in, right? So these are where the cyber threats happen, right? how are the holes in my defenses occurring? So this is like when you build your fort, right? Let's say I'm building a giant fort and I decide to use really soft tufa rocks instead of granite or marble. That's a quality problem, right? It makes it easy for somebody to just poke a hole in it and get into my fort, right? So the same kind of thing here, right? A lot of the problems that we see in cybersecurity start with bad quality process, right? So usually in the software that runs on something. So if you have a satellite or you have a computer on the ground that touches that satellite, and the software that does that was not built using really good standards, what'll happen is that will leave holes and opportunities that can be exploited at a later date by your enemies. So if it's bad quality software, it's going to be fragile, right? Something's going to happen, some error condition is going to occur, and leaves the door open. And a lot of times when we're talking about things that go into space, a lot of times you just didn't anticipate the fact that it's going to have to be updated for the fact that there are things that change on Earth, right? So I'm not just talking about updates that increase your capability. I'm talking about updates that close all those holes that you didn't even know existed, right? Because now somebody's found them, right? So that's usually the top item right there. That's 90% of your problems from cybersecurity. The rest of them happen down here with the other things, right? So sometimes the bad guys insert a backdoor vulnerability in the software or processors you used, and that's called a supply chain hack, right? So it happened with casinos, for example, right? They produced a bunch of slot machines over in Southeast Asia somewhere. One of the gangs got in there and inserted a chip in the process so that the slot machine had their chip in it. They hit a bunch of keystrokes, all the money came out, right? That's called a supply chain hack, where I've stuck something in the process, all the things that you've assembled to build that satellite or that spacecraft, and now that backdoor's sitting there, right? And since spacecraft have to do things wireless, you're not taking a wire all the way up there, right? Everything's wireless. That means anybody can catch it, right? Data can get between satellites, between spacecraft and the ground. If I'm the ISS, I'm sending data down. If I'm a factory, and I'm sending operating instructions to operate my factory maybe, or plans, right? Intellectual property, all those things can be intercepted because it's wireless, right? All I got to do is sit in the right spot and catch it. And then there are going to be opportunities, and this is a scarier one because it can cause a big problem, right? Is countries are looking to attack satellites, they can grab and compromise spacecraft in space. We know our country's adversaries are doing so, right? They are looking at technology to have satellites go up and grab other satellites. They could grab a human-operated spacecraft too, right? And then they could either hack it or they could get control of it. Now, if you can get control of a spacecraft, I can use that spacecraft just like a missile. Now, that's a horrible idea because you can end up with Kessler syndrome, right? You can blow up stuff, and now I can't use space either, but depends on their motivation, right? So there are attack satellites in development by our adversaries. Usually this is really the more technical way of describing how something gets in there, right? So you have one of those threats, and that leads to a weakness that is included on accident or on purpose. So I have bad quality, right? Once I have a vulnerability that matches against that weakness, now I can create an exploit for that vulnerability, and bam, I'm in. Right? So an exploit is a way to get into the system that's confirmed and I know I can do it. A vulnerability is potentially a hole in the system, and a weakness is a potential of a potential, right? So a threat uses an exploit, gets into your system. Now you can stop that, right? In this case, if I'm developing something or maintaining something, right, I can use quality measures that stop the weaknesses from occurring, that make my software more stronger, that make my system more secure, that I test it more and make sure I find a lot of things before the bad guys do, right? So I remove those vulnerabilities, I make improvements, I make measures in the system that just control how things occur inside the system. As processes are running, only the processes I want to run are running, and only the things I want the users to see, they see, right? So them are all different things that can happen to prevent this chain of danger, right? just doing a lot of things that sound like common sense. There are new threats every day, right? I have a graph in one of my other prezos. And by the way, all my other cyber stuff I stuck out on the web too, so you can look at all up to, and it's much more technical and detailed than this for some of the space cyber stuff I've done before. There's this link that has all the common vulnerabilities and exposures that is maintained by MITRE. If you go in there, you can see all the vulnerabilities that have happened that are rolling in there as they happen, right? As somebody finds a vulnerability, they log it in the database, they put a bunch of details in there, and now everybody goes out there and scrambles to try to fix it, right? So if you're looking at something like, let's say, Linux and Red Hat, which is a very common operating system for CubeSats, they get about 400 possible vulnerabilities per year, right? You might be running Linux and that Red Hat real-time operating system on, a spacecraft, right? A human-operated spacecraft or a station, right? 400 per year, roughly. A typical server that's running Windows, for example, right? It's updated by a good IT staff. It has around 100 possible vulnerabilities per month across all the possible Microsoft products on that server. If it's just networking stuff, right? So different networking equipment, satellite equipment, some of that's other stuff that's making the bits move between locations, 300 to 400 per year, right? So that means if I've launched a satellite or a spaceship or whatever into space factory, space settlement, it will accumulate vulnerabilities until I patch it, right? So for example, anybody's familiar with Windows knows they have patch, I want to say Tuesday or Thursday, I can't remember which. So every week they send out patches, right? So every vulnerability is an opportunity for a hacker until it's closed. So if I launched a satellite in 2022 and it used Red Hat and Linux RT, right? Red Hat and Linux real time, then I didn't update it. By 2025, it would have over 1,000 vulnerabilities that can be exploited. So all those older satellites, nobody planned on updating them, right? They might update the math in there. They might update the stuff in there, but they might not have updated any of the core software that sits below it because it might be just implemented in firmware, right? It might just be burned on the chip. So let's say you have a satellite, right? So satellites orbit at low Earth orbit, maybe medium Earth orbit, right? You have to have multiple stations for coverage. So if you're Starlink, this is your world, right? You're going around the Earth, and then there are different stations. In some cases, it's going to be very soon satellite directly to cell phone, right? But usually what happens is the satellite will have a control channel that tells the satellite, okay, operate like this. And then it'll have like a data channel where it sends data back. Now, if it's a networking system, it has two data channels, one for the data going up and one for the data going back, right? If it's a sensor system, it'll have like an image and it's sweeping over the Earth, like a weather satellite, for example, right? It's sweeping over the Earth and collecting that data. So this control channel, if I'm a hacker, I want that, right? Maybe I want the data too, but I really want the control channel. So that's a big risk. It's one connection from whoever's controlling the satellite up, right? So I really want to hack anything in this chain, right? From the satellite to the ground system and anything on the ground. So there's a lot of things that are just on the satellite itself, like I said, that are risks, right? So let's just looking at the satellite. You could have a chip on the power controller that contains a threat or a vulnerability. You can have a data channel that gets intercepted. Some software could just have a bunch of memory violations on it. So it's maybe written in C or C++, and somebody forgot to control the memory when they were going through. Oopsie, right? And if I really want to get really nightmarish, one of those killer satellites is up there grabbing my satellite and attacking it. Really, the big threat to satellites most often is on the ground, right? So yes, I can intercept the control channel, and you see me doing it up here, right? But all these little bounces in here for all these things on the ground that control the satellite, right? Or maybe if it's a sensor satellite pushing that sensor data back and forth, right? All those things are an opportunity, every one of those. And at some point, it's connected to the internet, right? That ISP button, that's the internet, right? If I'm sending the data, if I'm a weather satellite, like the GOES satellites in NOAA, right? So the ones that look at hurricanes, for example, that data goes down to the ground, goes through some processing, and then gets dumped to a cloud so that the weather researchers can use the data, right? And anything in that chain is a hack opportunity, right? Sometimes that means I can just steal the data. Sometimes it means I can just disrupt the data. But if that happens to be the control system that I got into and I get into that control server, I can control the satellite too, right? Or now here's another nightmare scenario where I got a compromised satellite and I pretend to be the good satellite and I send it a bunch of fake data, right? So maybe I don't want them to know exactly when the hurricane's going to hit. Maybe I'm going to send them enough data that I'm going to tell the hurricane it's going to hit Mexico, and when really the hurricane's going to swing up into Florida. And so now I know I can short all my Florida frozen concentrated orange juice stocks and make my money, right? There's a lot of risks, as I said, on the ground station, just like that. And then the same thing follows for any other kind of thing, right? The whole ground station all the way to the cloud. Well, the cloud itself is a threat too. So Amazon Web Services can get hacked, right? The internet service provider can get hacked. Ground station can get hacked anywhere on its LAN, and now the satellite too. So that's the satellite threat, and that's where a lot of threats have happened. Most of the threats to date, like I said, have been against the ground systems. NASA, for example, JPL got hacked with all their user credentials, and for a while that caused mayhem. And there have been other satellite hacks as well that have really targeted the ground station or the control systems that go from the ground station up to the satellite. There have been a few hacks against satellites, right? There are X number of them a year. Some you'll never hear about. There are some directly against the satellites. Some are like against CubeSats, which means nobody cares. Some are against trying to attack larger satellites that they have to respond to. Starlink was one that the Russians have been trying to hack for a while, right? And then there's other hacks where Russians have actually tried to use satellites and set up their own command and control system, which means they're sneaking on the bandwidth of some of the satellite bandwidth providers, not Starlink. So Starlink got hacked, but they patched it right away, and now Russia's screwed. They haven't been able to get in again, right? And then Russia hacked the ground station. They couldn't get into that again either, right? A couple updates done, right? Russia was pushed out because they're very efficient. But there are older internet providers that use satellite data, and a lot of Russian hackers have ridden on top of that network connection and hidden underneath it and made themselves sort of undetectable. So they can actually ride that internet connection if you're using the satellite as an internet. Let's go past satellites. Talk about something a little more interesting, right? So satellites can be hacked, ground station can be hacked. Let's say I've got something a little better. So one of the big business models for our future NSS settlement universe, right? If we're talking free floating space settlements, we're talking orbital space hotels, we're talking factories, maybe we're talking research stations or actual settlements on the moon or settlements on Mars, right? In all of these cases, these facilities are sort of going to have this model where they're going to have a common infrastructure. And then that's going to link to a tenant area where somebody's going to come in and execute their business or maybe just live there, right? So you're going to have a tenant area and they're going to bring their own toys into that area. And then they're going to use the commonly shared infrastructure. And that infrastructure is going to be things like communications, environmental control, because they don't want it to get too hot or too cold, life support. Maybe I send them some oxygen, right? Electrical power, right? And then security and alarm system, right? And I'm going to assume that maybe they want to use the station's data and cloud software system. So the station has its own cloud, right? Whether it's a settlement on a location or a free floating settlement, right? Or maybe a free floating factory. It's going to have its own little local cloud, right? And then it's going to have communications that reach out across space, either back to Earth, to other settlements, other factories, other hotels. Right, so let's set it up like that, where you have this tenant, you have tenants who use a common infrastructure provided by that station or settlement. So keep that in your head, right? And that means the tenants can bring in their own software on their own systems, maybe some extra electronic equipment, and have their own data, right? And I'm assuming they don't want their data going to the world. So one of the ways you analyze cybersecurity in this kind of scenario is you create a thing called threat scenarios, right? So what I do is I say, okay, I'm going to use my imagination and come up in this case with 4 different scenarios for how somebody could come in and cause trouble or maybe take stuff, right? So for example, maybe I have a tenant in a nearby cube, right? So I have tenant A in their little area. I have tenant B in their little area, right? And I want to go in and grab data from maybe we're competitors, right? Maybe we're both making printing 3D organs or chips, which are great 0G business cases, right? Maybe I want to steal some of their data, right? So tenant A wants to steal data from tenant B. Maybe I have this external spacecraft, which could be a satellite, could be human operated craft, right? Could be another station, maybe even, right? I want to alter a data element or plant a virus in tenant B's cloud. So I want to either pollute their data or I want to put some contaminant that I can execute later, right? I'm going to plant maybe a little backdoor in there that at a later date I can use. So that's another scenario. A third scenario, maybe I'm a visitor, right, to the overall station. And maybe I'm sneaking up there into this factory, or I'm coming directly into the hotel as a guest. And I'm going to steal everything I can get my fingers on, right? All the data I can get. And then a fourth scenario is a tenant wants to see tenant A's environmental controls and just do something really subtle, right? So what I'm going to do is I know that all their tissue engineering needs the temperature at a certain level, and I'm just going to drop it to 2 degrees cold or 2 degrees hot. Something really subtle, right? So those are just 4, but I mean, honestly, if I were doing this, I would get a bunch of people in a room. We'd get it on a whiteboard, and I would pin them down for 3 or 4 days and come up with like a dozen, 2, 3, 4, 5 dozen top level scenarios like this. Now, I know that's what's going to happen. How would I stop them, right? So now that I've come through these scenarios, I would walk through them in great detail, by the way, much more detail than we can go into tonight, right? But I would go into great detail on each one of these 4 scenarios at least, right? And find out what gets touched in each case. And then now, how would I stop it, right? So for example, if I want to stop that first scenario, right, to keep the tenants from hitting each other's stuff, I'm going to probably make sure I've got really good firewalls, which regulate the traffic between. So they're both using the common fiber optic structure, maybe on the station. And so I'm going to come up with better rules to control what can go between point A and point B. Maybe I make the station do it too. So I'm not only going to do it on my part, because I can't, trust but verify. I'm going to do it on my part, in my tenant area for tenant B. I'm going to do that for my stuff, right? Or not, but I'm also going to probably recommend that the station do it too, right? That they tighten their controls and limit tenant A to tenant B sharing without some kind of mutual agreement between them, right? So that kind of thing. I'm also going to say, hey, you guys need to encrypt everything you have. You have encrypt it while it's sitting there, and you encrypt it when you send it places, right? Because if you don't encrypt it, you're just asking for somebody to look at it, right? So those are options, right? I could also do some kind of filter or control for the different internet traffic between external spacecraft for the second scenario, right? So that other things out there. So maybe I limit, unless I can verify that that spacecraft is something I want to actually see my way into the network. I think what I'm going to probably do is if it's an external spacecraft, I'm going to stop it at the outer edge of my network and say, yeah, until I know you're a tenant, you don't get to see nothing. You get 0 access. You can't even see it. You can't even look on your systems and even know that there's anything in the station. The station to you is just a dead hunk of lead as far as you're concerned, right? Because I'm going to write the rules on my station to make sure that if it's not a trusted spacecraft, it sees nothing. And if it is a trusted spacecraft, all it sees is just enough nav data to dock, right? Something along those lines, right? If it's a visitor, well, needless to say, visitors by default get no access unless I decide to grant them specific access to specific things, right? This is essentially called a thing called zero trust, where I trust no one. I assume that everybody coming in has no need to see anything unless they prove to me otherwise, right? And of course, yes, I'm going to encrypt everything on the station, right? And that includes environmental control, That includes the cloud that I store in the station data, right? So in my little stations cloud, my settlements cloud, I'm going to encrypt all of that, right? And I'm going to compartmentalize it so that you have to have a reason to see the little pieces that I'm allowing you to see, and you can't see anything else, right? You have to have your own login credentials. I might even tie it to a card or something. So you have to have a card and you have to have a password, right? Or a biometric and a password, something like that. Two things, right? So you have two-factor authentication to even see the little bit I'll let you see, right? And finally, the fourth scenario here, where this one wants to do really something subtle. Environmental control is something you need to control deeply in any space stuff. We have living people at a minimum, even if it's just a robotic station. That's all delicate, right? Space is very harsh. And so if we're going to have free-floating settlements, Martian, lunar settlements, right? All those places, you've got to make sure that the environmental control is and life support and electrical power and all those things are very well locked down, right? So number one, I don't let anybody touch that unless they are specifically a person who's authorized with at least 2 or 3 factors of confirmation. And even then, they can only do a few things to touch environmental control life support, right? And then the other thing is environmental control is a separate network from life support, and it's separate from the electrical power system, and it's separate from whatever I let the tenants send their data over, right? All those things are separated networks. So they're all separate universes. So even if somebody gets into one, they can't get into all of them, right? And then another thing would be, if tenants are concerned about their environmental stuff, I'm going to allow them go into my overall station/settlement system that has my monitoring system. I'm going to allow them to submit requests for alarms so that if it does go up a degree or down, then the station control sees that too, right? That's now in my system, and I see, oh, hey, you have a separate thermometer that says this thermometer is wrong, and ooh, we need to do something, right? So that plus everything above. So that's the gist of how you would secure your space settlement, right? You'd walk through scenarios exactly like this and architect accordingly. So let's talk about the AI side of this now. So since I brought it up, right? AI is both a risk and an opportunity in cybersecurity. So on the good side, and yes, I'm referencing a Clint Eastwood movie, AI could enhance how you find things that are problems. In fact, this has been done for a while. So back in the 90s, when I was working for an internet backbone, we actually had machine learning algorithms that would look at the utilization graph. So the traffic coming in and out of a router, for example, right? And it would look at it, and if it looked a certain way, it would send a notice to the people that are watching the system that we have a denial of service attack underway. So that was even back in the 90s. I mean, not in the 90s, sorry, early 2000s, right? So that's been used for a couple decades, right? We've been doing that. And there are systems already, network monitoring systems that already look at internet traffic and security systems that look at this already using elementary machine learning to look for patterns that indicate bad things, right? So that's already out there, right? Already happening, right? It'll just get better as time goes on. Eventually, you'll have things that will that not only check it and send out alarms, they'll also probably defend it, right? So they'll actually actively go, okay, that's a denial of service attack, shut off all these routes, shut off this route, do this, do that, right? It will automatically respond very quickly to anything it sees that's out of the normal. And then if they don't like it, well, they can call in and try to get it fixed, right? So by default, it will respond. Now that's a chance that we're taking too, because the problem with AI is it sounds like it's totally unpredictable behavior, but it doesn't mean you can't stimulate it and expect within a certain probability a certain kind of response. So that could be a problem too. AI is often used to test software and systems now. So there's a thing called fuzzing, where I come up with all the horrible ways that I can try to use this piece of software or this computer system, right? I can send it all these awful things and see if I can stimulate an error that I can use to hack it, right? Or cause it to drop, right? Just cause it to go all the way down. And so right now, artificial intelligence is used to do that kind of testing. That is something we do now, right? And that's only going to improve over time. Essentially, you're going to have this artificial intelligence tester that's going to run hundreds of thousands of possible things to break the system, so that way the people who are developing the system can focus on, okay, what should have we done in our process to make sure that never happened, right? To make sure that error that it found never occurs, right? So I'm going to use artificial intelligence to do hundreds of thousands of things that I don't have the time or money to do myself, right? And then another use is the large language models are really good nowadays for finding fixes and procedures for a lot of problems in both writing software and in fixing stuff, right? Go through a process and says, okay, this data processing system has had this kind of error, right? And it's showing these kind of problems. So I go into the large language model, which is a type of artificial intelligence, and say, okay, what are the steps I should go through to fix it, right? So that happens right now too. That will only improve, right? So it's great. Large language models are really good for finding fixes, especially if I focus their training on my kind of system and my kind of problem. So that's already happening, right? On the bad side, large language models are already being used to construct hacking programs, scripts, and processes. So remember I told you before there were these kind of hackers called amateurs or script kiddies? So that means they don't have to have a very high expert level to cause a higher degree of mayhem, right? The expertise level can drop, but the mayhem can increase because they're using the expertise that's trained into these large language models, right? So they can already do that. They can already use large language models to construct ways to get into vulnerabilities, exploit vulnerabilities, or to just find ways to find vulnerabilities in a system, or create different kinds of hacks, right? So they can also automate attacks and adapt to defenses that continue to assault or find holes. So I have a defensive AI, now I have an offensive AI, and the two are essentially battling it out, right? That can happen, right? And if I have lots of compromised computers, I can use every one of those as a little AI to fire away at the one that's controlling my system. AIs can use in hacker labs really quick to find vulnerabilities in software and then quickly plant adaptive agents into the target system. So what I could do is I could find a vulnerability, not tell the world about it, right? Not collect a bug bounty, which is one way to make money in cybersecurity, is find lots of vulnerabilities, go to whoever's offering a bounty for discovery, send them the bounty, send them the vulnerability and collect the bounty, right? But in this case, they held on to it. And then what they do is they can plant a baby AI in the system that hides itself and adapts as you update your system, right? And one of the ways they can do that is a thing called living off the land, which means they're already using running code on your system. They just assemble the bits and pieces. They have little pulls that go from the lines of software that are already running on your system and assemble them like Lego blocks into their hack.
Bryce, are you still there? I think we've locked up. It looks like he's frozen there. Let me try to.
Yeah, it looks
Yep.
like he's trying to come back.
Yeah, we just lost him. Okay. He said his internet connection was a little shaky. Everybody hold on for a little bit. We'll try to get him back.
Send in your questions and comments.
Let's see, I'm going to reach out to him.
And Robert Abrams would like to possibly speak with a question or something.
Well, I think we should wait till we get Bryce back.
Okay.
Say, let me just send him a note here. Oh, someone there said he probably got hacked. Okay. Wouldn't that be the irony? Oh.
So Robert was just wanting to tell us about that he dropped out. So we're all good.
Yeah, I've just sent Bryce a note. I'm waiting to see if I get a response back. Yep, that's what I'm trying to do. Yep. Trying to text him.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Or yeah, can you flip the slides? It looks like my internet took a dive.
Okay, let me call it up.
Slide 19.
Let me do that right now. Let's see here. Just need to get to my internet.
Sorry about that. Like I said, the internet's been flaky. It's been a real pain in the butt since I work from home when I don't travel.
No problem.
No problem. Everybody stayed on board here waiting for you to come back.
Yeah, let me
I was
just.
about to get through the bad part of it, cybersecurity and AI, right?
Okay, I'm downloading it now.
As soon as it comes back up, I'll hop on again. But
Okay. Okay. So where were you? You were 14. Let me see where you were. You were on the bad part of AI, right?
I was on the slide 19. I'm trying to see if it's come back up. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, cybersecurity and AI the bad. So let me share my screen here.
We've had a little flooding. I wonder if it's flooded one of the boxes.
Okay. Okay, I'm back up. I've got slides, cybersecurity and AI the bad up right now.
Beautiful. Okay, continuing on, right? Well, like I said, large language models are already used to create hacking programs and scripts, different hacking procedures into systems, right? We have. And AIs can automate attack steps, so we can have the AI versus AI scenario where I have an AI as defense, a whole bunch of AIs as an attacker. It can happen. Like I said, artificial intelligences can now be used. I've already said that I can use like testing to test my software to find vulnerabilities before the bad guys do. The bad guys beat me to it, doing the same kind of thing. I can sit there and use existing code in your system. If I have things that are running in my operating system in Windows, for example, there are already types of viruses that grab pieces of that running software and like Lego blocks, use it to do its attack and hide from the system. So that already happens. Now, maybe I add a little AI in the process too, right? So might pick different pieces of program to run, might take different kinds of attacks, pieces that are already on the system, because remember, we already have AI agents on our Windows systems now already, in our Apple systems too. You already have AI libraries running on your system. Something could utilize those AI libraries right. Happen now. anything that has an AI on it, like an AI chip, like a satellite or a space station or a tenant, all have that happen. Somebody comes in and essentially uses their own AI against them. And I can hide traffic inside of the normal internet. So I can hide my data, side of the data that's already being sent in and out of my station, between the tenants in the station, right? Between my satellite and the ground or into the cloud. I can hide that. If I have a networking system like Starlink, not now, Starlink hasn't had this happen yet, but let's say an older satellite provider, I mentioned it before, and hacker groups have found a way to hide their data inside there. They're using that normal innocuous satellite internet signal where people are looking at pictures of their dogs. Inside of that is a few bits the Russian hackers are using to send between their different parts of their hacking enterprise. Given complexities, could have the AI agent just hide in your code or electronics that becomes part of your system. See somebody using an AI to construct their software, right? And while I'm in there, the AI has extra little pieces in there that help me as a hacker. You could actually sort of pollute your AI to make it create software or chip designs, because a lot of chips are designed nowadays. Cool too. A lot of the electronic chips that are on a system are designed by tools. If I used AI in there, I could actually sneak stuff in that AI to make it add a hack to every chip it makes. Let's add to slide 20. I already mentioned this, I think. Tell me when you're there.
AI the ugly, right?
AI can be polluted a couple ways. So when I talk about AI pollution, I already said that artificial intelligence trained on a pattern, then it uses a math algorithm to respond to use that pattern, respond to inputs, right, and provide certain outputs. What it does. You can actually pollute that AI, provide subtle responses that do bidding for me in whatever it's making as an output. So, like I said, the complex software that's out there is already made by tools. If you're using AI to make it, and insert whatever snippet I want when you did the process of training, maybe I polluted your training data. There. It's sending out a hack every time. But the thing with the chips, like I said, AI can now result in a lot of hacks that are being included by as you're designing it very early in the process. So if you had a quality process, had limited control, you containerized everything in your software, so it only did what it was supposed to do and didn't reach out any way you didn't want it to. You had really good testing as you're producing your software in your chips. You're finding things before everybody else does. This AI threat isn't as big as you might think. AI threat's really no worse than any other kind of threat against the system, because now you're using your quality processes to make sure it still is made with good quality. You're using practices. You're limiting what happens inside your system. You're hardening off things, sure that even if a little piece gets hacked, it can't go anywhere. Practice is the undoing of all these cybersecurity and AI problems, right? One of those things just limits the probability of it occurring a lot. The downside is, like I said, the cybersecurity hacks, he's talking about orbital settlements where life support, anything in space, to involve humans, is literally deadly important. So there's a lot more threat just getting data hacked once we replace those satellites, orbital factories. You have settlements on the moon or Mars. Hacking incident can definitely result in death. Absolutely, right? It can even literally hold the whole group hostage. It can hold a bunch of settlers on Mars hostage from Moon, Earth, whatever. Hacker could go in there and control their life support system instead of typical ransomware where you're paying a ransom just to get your data back. Just you're paying ransom literally to rescue your settlers who are now essentially hostages. cybersecurity takes on a much more deadly impact, and that means that we have to have much better quality as we go forward. Go to slide 21. We'll talk about how the economy happens here.
I'm there.
Okay. So, the space economy right now, and probably in the future, one of the biggest exports, not necessarily going to be rocks from Mars, unless you're building things in orbit, and then it will definitely be an export. But if you're talking about an export, let's say from the moon to Earth or Mars to Earth, one of the biggest exploits is going to be data. Data is one of the big things that you're moving around right now, right? So right now, the current space economy is data of different types. Like data for weather, using the satellite as an internet location, things like the International Space Station, doing some of the future orbital hotels, are all hinging on data. Like probes send valuable data back to Earth. Scenario, you could just go in there and just stir the weather data, and make orange juice, right? But also, notice, you could alter data in more drastic ways that maybe I don't want to see enemy movements on the ground. China decides to go into Taiwan and we can't see it. So worst case is where you get a satellite and turn it into a missile. I think I already mentioned that before. Kessler syndrome, which is sort of a pyrrhic victory at best, which means you might have won, but you didn't want to win. It's over for everybody. Space economy. The future is going to be a little different. Go to slide 22.
I am there.
Yeah, in the future, it's not just which is intellectual property data is too good not to steal or alter. We're still going to have that. You're going to also have a lot more products. Power being one of them. We just talked about the fact that for power, look at the graph on the right, energy becomes a thing. Even if you're not even beaming it to Earth, even if you're beaming it to the moon, right? Even if I'm a company that creates a bunch of nuclear satellites and does stuff, right? Nuclear stations and things, all that happen, right? So manufacturing resources and energy are a huge slab in the future. With communications and data storage, never gotten rid of the fact that you still need something that provides navigation data. If I'm moving around Mars with Martian spacecraft, in some way of navigating, I probably am going to have something that a navigation signal and a timing signal somewhere. So in the near future, maybe I don't want a competitor to make a new chip in space, so I just mess with their factory. It's going to be a threat. Maybe my competitors have miners. I want their robots to lose contact with the humans on the base. Maybe I want them to deliver their helium-3 to my base even. Maybe I just want to find out what my adversaries found in a core sample on Mars. Maybe they found something really good, right? A really good ice deposit. I want to know that before the rest of the world does. Maybe they'll find out, and now I'll find out. Maybe my water selling to Mars goes down the hill because now they found this big ice deposit, right? So I need to know that ahead of time, and I can short my own stock or something. Maybe I just want to hack solar panel control, grade the electrical power either on a space solar power satellite or just a local station, right? These are near term. So we're already past maybe the next 5 years, right? Maybe 10 years, but now we're talking 10, 20, 30 years in the future. It's all become realistic, right? Factories are going to be a thing. So is tourism. We know that's right off the bat, but that's not the only thing. If something that can be messed with, first, cybersecurity is going to be a concern. We'll go to the real distant future next.
Okay, we're there.
Now we're sort of into the war between science and science fiction-y, but can make microscopic robotic agents and get me into a location, and now they can execute my cybersecurity threat. They can sneak little robotic levers on the outside of a ship, or settlement, or station, to sneak them into shipments, move to the right system, jump onto it. Now I can execute a hack right there between physical and cyber kind of hack, right? So it's a cyber hack, but I'm using a physical agent to do it. So really wild. What if I do something where I'm a cyber attack, the chemistry of something else? Right? Theoretically, I could make a smart mold in vents. I could hack little robots that hack the genomic sequence in bacteria as a result, or the mold in the vents, and the mold causes everybody to get a really bad cold. To their productivity, I make money as a competitor. Something just like that, right? And anything, of course, that where I can affect how we're farming crops, right, in space, affecting life support, mining. All these are heavily robotic systems in the future, right? Robots are going to probably a lot of construction for us before we arrive. We're going to be setting up our farms. Probably going to have a lot of labor on the farm being a robot, right? They're going to be doing the picking, daily monitoring, like that. We're going to have control systems everywhere in our system. I already know from the Colonial Pipeline hack, control systems are a soft point here on Earth. They're probably still going to be a soft point in space. Needless to say, banking and commerce, yeah, if I can get into a system that does stock manipulation or snipe off a penny here and there from a banking system, you see how that goes, right? They're all things that are juicy enough that you're going to have a cyber risk against all those things using the methods we've already talked about. Go to the last slide here.
And we're there.
So, right now, space systems are hard to update. In a lot of Mars, right? A lot of the probes on Mars are utterly unupdatable. And the biggest reason things aren't updatable a lot of places in space is because of speed of light delay. It takes a long time. It takes 20 minutes to send anything to Mars data-wise. The Anarchy, it didn't get it for 20 minutes. That's on a good day. So that speed of light delay, all space systems harder to update. Even if they're in orbit, it's at least a couple milliseconds. It takes me a lot of time to upload patches and things. I might not have constructed it knowing that that satellite was going to be up there 20 years. Maybe I figured it was only going to be up there 5. So I didn't even plan for an update. So the whole time that it's been sitting up there, the longer it's unpatched, it's accumulating those hundreds of vulnerabilities. Every one of those vulnerabilities is an opportunity for exploit. Cybersecurity defense, good practice, process, and quality and testing, really. We have a good process. One of the kinds of processes that you're going to hear in the cyber world that is a great way your way down the journey of making sure your stuff is securely developed, called DevSec. So develop, secure, operate as a process. What that means is I have a lot of tools in my system that every single time I hit the save button for software I'm developing, maybe even a hardware design, time I hit the save button, the thing it does, get against all known vulnerabilities and check it to make sure it works as designed. I write the test actually before I write the code. So it runs all those tests before it even lets it get into the overall path. Then I do more testing as it goes through, and I have an independent group do a final bit of testing, goes out the door. This is happening continuously. I'm constantly delivering code. I can let into little teeny bits of effort, have it accumulate as fast updates to the overall system, which allows me to patch even faster. I think the question was asked, what's a good one? DevSec, get up. A good, interesting way of doing things, right? So AI is both a benefit and a danger for all cybersecurity. It'll be an arms race, really, AI against AI. Like I said, everything needs to adapt, right? And then the space economy is going to create things that are so juicy that they're going to be worth messing with or stealing. We have most of the hackers we see, other than just general mayhem, that's like script kiddie stuff, lower level amateur stuff. The real juice is making money. Hackers on most of the real hacking bad behavior is actually done at the expert level, really make money one way or the other, right? If it's not to make money by professional groups for governments, achieve subtle government level objectives. For example, the Russians, what did they do? They shut down the Ukrainian cell phone grid. They shut down their internet grid, and denial of service attacks against Starlink and other places. Because we're using that as a part of their national objective to, of course, take Ukraine. Now, that's also more subtle than that, right? Right now, the Israeli-Hamas stuff going on, right, has hacking going both directions. Cyber war because they're national level objectives. I could come up with 1,000 other ones. Those are national level objectives by national level or pseudo-national groups. The real juice is in the money. Drug lords, the dark web, a lot of other places are where the money is, where the big hackers act, and where the most hackers really play. That's going to change as we go deeper into space. Factories have money involved with intellectual property, and you're going to have competitors, and have kinds of corporate competitors that want to do subtle things to make sure they keep their economic advantage. The money is where it's going to be, intellectual property is where it's going to be. They will always exist, always going to be a pain in the butt, and you will never be obviated away from cybersecurity. That's all the slide deck I had. I mean, we'll post all these on my website, by the way. There's some references in the slide deck as well. I'll post these on my Space Farms site, -farms.com. Post these slides there, and I think Bert said he was going to post them too. So I know we have a bunch of Q&A.
Yes. Okay, Bryce, if we go a little bit longer because we got interrupted for a few minutes.
I can go as long as you want.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, what you presented is interesting and scary at the same time. And so I'm just wondering, yes. But to take two questions and combine them into one that was submitted by Carl on the Q&A, basically is what you're saying is anyone can hack and anyone can be hacked. Is that a great to sum it up?
Absolutely correct.
Wow.
And like I said, I teach a course in ethical hacking to my students so that they know how to hack so they can defend it.
Right. And that goes back to several years ago, I got to see Vince Cerf speak.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just an extraordinary man. But he was reporting that the U.S. government, one U.S. government agency had enlisted him to talk to some of their cybersecurity experts. And his message there to them was, we need to teach people how to hack so they can defend it. And he ran into a lot of resistance to that. No, we can't do that. We can't teach people how to hack. That's bad. And he made I think his analogy was, how in the world can you train a doctor without illness and disease? And I thought that was yep. pretty sharp. So what you're saying is what you're doing, and it's called ethical hacking, but you're training people, in order to figure out how to defend it. You got to figure out how are they going to attack us, right?
And some of the tools, if you want to start down the trail of finding the kind of tools, will teach you how the ethical hacking side works, right? So you can essentially hack yourself. Some of those tools are like Kali Linux, for example. The flavor of the Linux operating system has a bunch of tools built in. It has a bunch of elementary cybersecurity and hacking tools built in. That's always fun to play with on your own systems, called John the Ripper. Another one's called Hashcat. Those two will allow you to try to guess the passwords on your systems and attack them.
Right. Interesting.
That's the ethical hacking.
Right.
The secure side, and I know this was a question that somebody asked before. For the other tools, there's things called static analyzers, dynamic analyzers, and there's a long list of them. You can use to test your systems and your software before you get to the point where you're trying to hack them.
So basically,
also a book I use in the there's a book I use in the ethical hacking class, by the way. The chief textbook I use actually in that course Normally, all my other classes do not have textbooks. The only course I have with one is the ethical hacking course called Gray Hat Hacking, Ethical Hacker's Handbook. Cheap, find it anywhere. I think it's $60. It's a good one.
Right.
Walk through the exercise, train yourself up.
Right. Very interesting. So basically we're in it's going to be a never ending battle, right? As people try to figure out new ways to hack, you have to figure out and try to anticipate that and come up with different ways to defend.
It's a never ending battle, but you're going to have artificial intelligence as part of your defense strategy now.
Right.
I'm going to use AI not only to find things that are broken, respond back. So, and like I said in the past, I had it where I would send me an alarm to my observers, right? I would send an alarm to them saying, hey, there's a likely denial of service attack against this device, right? That was even, 2005 or 6 time frame, right? Nowadays, there are already AI implemented tools in a lot of the network monitoring packages and software monitoring packages out there. Already do some of this, but they don't defend yet. Will be responses in the near future. Right now, if they do defend, it's just strict set of rules that you already put in. Really, it's going to get smart where you're going to have AI be defending your systems as well.
Right. Very interesting. I do want to read a comment, kind of a question from Matt that he submitted. He said, cybersecurity on Earth is completely abysmal. Will it be any better in space? Will we have a new start or take the same old problems and bad behaviors with us? What's your take on that?
It's not going away.
It's not going away. Okay.
Some of the good behaviors are things. So there's a thing called zero trust. The concept, and right, and so the zero trust concept is I'm going to assume I'm going to get hacked, right? So I'm going to assume anybody that's going to try to come into my system is ill intent, no matter who they are. Therefore, I'm going to limit everything they can do. Then I'm going to encrypt everything, and then every program that runs on my system in its own little bomb-proof container, so that when it gets hacked, it can't go anywhere and do any damage. Zero trust is sort of the way that's emerging as a way to try to improve the cybersecurity situation. That will no doubt carry forward to factories and other places, right? I know that's already a principle used in a lot of the modern satellites like Starlink, right? So they already assume that. So that's
Right.
already it's already happening in a lot of the SpaceX toys. As we go forward, the zero trust concept is going to be a thing. It's going to cost you some processing overhead. That will move forward as we go into space. That kind of concept will be making things more and more granular, prove the cybersecurity situation until somebody finds something way to go around it, of course.
Right. I'm going to go to a couple questions that were submitted, and you talked in one of your slides. You talked about the enemies. Who are the major bad players out there from a government standpoint? I know, obviously, probably you mentioned Russia, China, but it's a lot of people.
Rand,
yep, okay.
And there's different groups that are loosely aligned with them. So if you go to the APT list in the CISA.gov, for their advanced persistent threat list, they have a giant list of them, and same with that link that I provided to the MITRE site that goes even deeper granularity. A lot of groups that are loosely associated with these governments. These loosely associated groups are there so they have some kind of plausible deniability, right?
Right.
Yes, China has they literally have 1 million people do cyber work outside of China, right? 1 million people. Some of it is internal. Some of it's externally focused too. So 1 million people, think about it. 1 million people, whose whole job is to do cyber. So that's definitely China. Iran has a subset of people. Now there are loosely organized groups that are also associated with maybe Iran. Iran sort of maybe gives them a little money, do a hack for them. Then if they get caught, well, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not Iran who did that. That was all us.
Right, right.
But there these loosely organized groups are becoming a way of doing a lot of cyber mayhem without officially being tied to the government of Russia, China, Iran. A lot of hacking. That's not the kind of hacking also out there just to make money. Because like I said, the drug lords, their own dark web, traffickers have their own dark web. They do their own hacks so they can take over systems and use them. That includes satellites, especially satellites that do networking data. That probably ain't going away either. Bad guys want to use other people's assets to do whatever ne'er-do-well crap they're doing.
Right. In terms of protection, you know, there are a lot of bad players. We've got a lot of people working on this issue. And is there one central point that is, you know, I don't know if I've never heard there's such a thing as a cybersecurity czar anywhere, but I know Space Force is doing things. But is there one place that says, hey, we need to get control of this and let's work together instead of working independently? I don't know if that's happening or not.
Several, so it depends on who you're talking about. So the government has the CISA.gov group,
Right?
Is a government group. They're in charge coordinating when vulnerabilities are found anywhere, ensure the world knows about them, right?
Right.
Ensure everybody knows who the threats are. Sort of a clearinghouse for a lot of cybersecurity stuff. That's CISA.org or .gov. It's in the United States. Other groups too. So for example, MITRE has the group that does the vulnerabilities and exposures, the weaknesses and exposures. They're paid by the US government to keep that data up to date. CBE.org, then CWE, MITRE. Right there are places that are already paid for by the US government to be the ultimate clearinghouse of all these vulnerabilities. They include fixes, right? You click your way through them and they'll show you, okay, this weakness leads to these vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities have these fixes. They're actually working with the vendors. The CISA group and then those other two groups already are working with vendors. And also the US CERT, an emergency response team that does this kind of stuff for cybersecurity. Software Engineering Institute out of Carnegie Mellon finds different practices that improve software in general. So if they find things that cause trouble in different types of compilers, different programming languages, have ways to keep those from happening in your code and ways to find them. And all those things get pushed out to different testing people that make software that look at testing things, like a company, for example, called Fortify, runs scans against your software to find these potential vulnerabilities, right? So those are pushed out by the SEI, or an international group called OWASP does it for Python and things that are associated with that kind of web technology. And then the group that does it just for C code called MISRA, ISRA. They maintain standards for C and C++ because those are the most super common language everywhere, in aerospace and in gold and things like that. And research groups. So there are, in addition to the Software Engineering Institute, right, I mentioned MITRE, who are huge. Professional organizations that have cyber-oriented groups. There's AIAA, which has a group called the Aerospace Cyber Working Group, which I'm part of. What we do is look at things that are specifically targeted at aerospace problems, so satellites, airplanes, missiles, that kind of thing, right? Look at the kind of practices that prevent issues, and then ways to build more securely overall. That's AIAA, Aerospace Cyber Working Group, and anybody who's in AIAA can join that group. EEE has a similar group work specifically on the same kind of problem, the problem in space and aerospace cybersecurity. IEEE has a group as well. Those are just that all get together. decide to fix things. But that's sort of the playing field of who's doing what. There's actually a map of this I have in one of my papers I did for AAA that you can probably find. And online you can find the map that has a map of all the different players. NSA does a lot of work on this. So does the National Institutes of Standards as well, coordinated again by that CISA.
Right.
That the NSA can tell the world about is in that CISA. Some things that, of course, they keep for themselves as military assets. And U.S. Space Force, U.S. Air Force, Army, Navy, right? They all have cyber groups that are all part of the same DoD enterprise.
What I did, Bryce, I did put your website into the chat, so hopefully people can grab some of that information. And everybody, I will send out a copy of Bryce's presentation. I saw a couple comments about that as well. So he said it's okay to circulate that. So we'll get that out to you. Hopefully, once we have the recording up and running, we'll include that with that. Let me try to go through a few other questions that were submitted. Carl asked a couple questions about problems with Boeing and Starliner and previous NASA accidents. I don't think there's any connection at all to cybersecurity with any of those. What do you think?
I don't think that's not a cyber one.
Yeah.
The quality, that's manufacturing quality in my book. There have been hacks that have affected satellites in the past, and NASA stuff. That's just not one of them.
Right. I see there were at one point a couple hands raised. Let me see if I can see those again. There we go. So Thomas has his hands raised. I'm going to let Thomas ask a question. Thomas, I'm going to allow you to talk. So you do need to unmute.
I didn't ask a question, so I don't know how that happened. I must have pushed the wrong thing.
Oh, your hand was up. Okay. No
Sorry
question.
about that.
Okay. Well, we have you. You have a question?
I don't. It's a very interesting talk.
Very good. Okay. Let's go back here and let me go through a couple of the others. I saw an interesting comment that someone had in the chat that was let me see if I can find it from Jeffrey here. I don't know whether you saw that one. Oh, okay. So Jeffrey's commented, is Bryce Meyer the Grinch who torpedoed the dream of a free and safe spacefaring civilization? I said, no, Bryce is just trying to help us here, right? But a good comment, Jeffrey.
I'm trying to stop that from happening. I want to make space farms, man.
Yes.
My dream. Yes. Trillions of happy, smiling babies and eating corn on wherever planet they're free-floating habitat they're at.
Right. Absolutely. So let me go through, let's see. Carl asked a question, is there a way to ID someone who's hacking you?
If they're dumb.
If they're dumb, okay.
Yeah, so here's the thing. You can do, here's something people don't really know. There's a thing out there called a looking glass. The thing that happens is if you find the internet address of somebody who's coming after you, right? You look at the first link in the chain, don't ever try to trace that from your machine, because now you give them a hacking target.
Oh, right.
What you do, you go into this thing called the looking glass. You can find them online. You can do the trace from there. Then, because this is what I teach my students to do, right? The trace there. So I have them do this for spam too, because it's fun this way. Have them to figure out where the train goes, right? What goes to that internet address, right? And then it turns out usually it's some poor sucker who doesn't even know their computer's hacked. Just contact their internet service provider and say, hey, this is a hacked machine. I want to take this IP address off your list. Turns out it's a whole pile of different machines that are hacked. And I'll go to the internet service provider and another thing called like cop. something like that and report the entire internet block. Then it will go out and the whole world will block it. There's sort of like the secret, like almost like, it's not a society, but all the internet backbones are really run by just a few architects of all their routing. Those people all talk to each other. They all get the data that programs all these routers in the same place. So they get a list of hacks and then they look at it with their own thing and go, yeah, sure, that's what people are using right now. So if there's a bunch of internet addresses that are bad, add them to their bad list and they block it as soon as it appears on the network. That's sort of how you both trace a hack and respond to them. But the problem is the bad guys just have a bunch of zombie computers out there. So really, most of the time, it's some poor sucker who doesn't even know their computer's being used as a weapon.
Oh, wow. Yeah, boy, they're sophisticated.
They're really sophisticated. And like I said, they can hide. A lot of the craftier hacks will hide inside the system and they'll smuggle their traffic out inside of your normal internet traffic. So while you're watching YouTube or something, they have a little bit of train in there that looks like any normal protocol, encrypts their traffic and fires it out to wherever they want to send it.
Right.
That just might be another router on their list. It just might be routing their traffic through you somewhere else, using your normal traffic.
Right. Let's see. Brandon asks a question. Are there any cybersecurity companies that sell cybersecurity products specifically for businesses in the commercial space industry?
Well, I don't know if it's for the commercial space industry. There are tons of companies that sell security tools. Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Needless to say, SolarWinds used to be one of the big ones that everybody used, but SolarWinds have had their own problems, so there are other companies that are in that ballpark that do the monitoring and checking. And a lot of the tools that they use are things I'd already mentioned on accident, right? So Fortify, SonarQube, and Synopsys to scan your software, for example. Those are three big ones that I see all the time that are out there that most companies use to scan their software. Fortify, SonarQube, and Synopsys, right? So they do one type of scan, and they'll do other kinds of scans. Like there's a tool called Vader that the government built for very purpose, so people can do stuff. Like Victi or Webin also has a bunch of stuff that they put out there for nothing. And all those tools are all used together. So what will happen in the government for aerospace systems now, they're smart. They not only use that DevSecOps process where they're scanning it all the time before it actually goes anywhere, they have an independent group that will scan it using a whole different set of tools, their eyeballs. Honestly, ball checking is one of those things you almost never get away from, right? Because the tools can't catch everything. One, a lot of the tools will find a bunch of crap that's useless to you. You have to sort of weed through it. The other side is there are some things that a tool just can't find. So that's part of it. The other side is runtime monitoring and checking. So there's a lot of tools that do that. A lot of times you also have to write your own script data when it comes in. You have to have a smart watcher, right? He's smart enough to see what they're seeing and know what it means. Takes a lot of training on top of that.
Right.
It's an expensive problem. In a lot of places, it depends on how well funded the project is, honestly. If it's poorly funded, their security measures are probably not as good. Ones that have a lot larger funding and are more critical.
Let me ask a couple more questions because one was submitted before as people registered about breaking into the cybersecurity industry. So, what does that take? And is if you're in the cybersecurity industry, is it an easy transition to doing it for space? Or, is it a similar type of a job, whether it's ground-based or space-based?
The space problem is really a subset of both wireless and real-time. That means that you can train into cybersecurity first,
right?
Then train yourself up on the things that are particular to space, right? So you can go that route, like I did, and go train yourself into aerospace first, then the route about training my way into cybersecurity, right? So either way works. If you want to be a worker bee in it, you just want to work in it at the nuts and bolts level, you can get certifications, right? You can get CompTIA is one of the more popular ones, or CISSP, or those kind of ethical hacker. There's actually a certification for ethical hacker. So those are the ways that really quickly get into the game. You can go online and walk your way through CompTIA and ethical hacker courses. Then you're at least, and the trick is getting that first job or internship that gets you in the door.
Right.
It's a lot easier if you, of course, have a degree in the field too. So let's just say, yeah, comp sci, software engineering, all degrees that lead into cybersecurity, right? I mean, so getting the degree and the certification is pretty much unbeatable, but a whole lot of people with no degree, just certifications, once they got that first job, they were off to the races, right?
Yeah, they're building
they got
experience.
That first foot in the door and got
right.
accumulating the experience, they were ready to roll.
Right. You presented a lot. You talked a lot about the threats, about how to defend them. What's your take on the future? Is it a positive take? Are we going to be able to stay ahead of these hackers? As especially you talked about the great danger to life when we're talking about some of the hacking in space.
I mean, some of it, like I said, I think we stay at this almost the same state we're in now. It's going to be a continuous battle.
It's just a continuous
battle.
battle.
That changing unless the motivation changes, right? You could somehow change the motivation of the people who want to hack you. Happy-go-lucky thing where nobody's going to want to hack you, that doesn't exist and hasn't existed since the day of the first computers, right? Always have somebody who wants to do something, or because they can make money at it. It's not going away.
No.
I don't see that going away. I think it's going to be a continuous arms race.
Okay. Well, very good. Bryce, thank you so much for a very informative and in a way, as we say, challenging or scary presentation. But I learned a lot. It's not an area of my specialty, and it just shows that as we're working to become spacefaring, and we talk about rockets, and we talk about spacecraft, and we talk about, as you said before, talking about food, we have to worry about this as well. And so really appreciate you bringing this to light. I see that.
Sorry about the Zoom link.
Yeah. What is that?
Sorry that the internet access dropped and I couldn't drive my own slides, or you couldn't see my pretty face anymore. But
oh yeah, no. Well, we made it work. We did a workaround, and we really appreciate that. So we thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to present tonight. And everybody, again, I will be sending out Bryce's presentation once we have the recording, and we'll send them all at once for you, so you'll have that. And we really appreciate it. So what I'm going to do now, everybody, as we get ready to sign off, again, thank Bryce, our presenter. And Bryce, we'd love to have you come back again and talk about this in the future, or other topics, maybe an update too on space farms as well. And so that would be great. And Fred, thank you.
In my inside space feed, I'm going to try to put as many of the Q&As from the earlier, the Word doc you sent me.
Oh, that would be
push
great.
Some of those.
Yeah, that would be
inside space feed. I'll try to put them on there.
Sounds great. And if you want to send that to me, I can also include that as I send that out as well. So perfect. Very good. Fred, thank you so much for your help tonight as well. And let me just share my screen one final time here as we sign off. Let's see. Let me just do this real quick, everybody. Just got to get back to sharing the screen here. There we go. So again, we thank Bryce for a really interesting presentation. So everybody, thank you so much for attending this evening. We really appreciate your support of the National Space Society and our town halls and space forums. We hope to see you again in next week as we bring together our NSS leadership. So we'll be sending out the invite early next week. So look for that and be sure to have all your questions ready to go. So as I said, thanks for attending. If you're in this time zone, have a great evening. For those of you in tomorrow's time zone, have a great day. And everyone, of course, have a great weekend and stay safe. So we'll see you again all next week. Thank you so much.
You all.